Dear colleagues, we are starting our discussion that is dedicated to the challenges and reforms that will be in the process of the negotiating process on accession of Ukraine and the reforms that will take to negate these challenges. Here we have quite big speakers. I would like to get Oleksandr Korniyenko, First Deputy Chief of the Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine here. The next one is Stefan Haukur Jóhannesson, former Chief Negotiator for Icelandic accession to the EU. I also would like to have here Laimonas Čiakas, former head of the EU Integration Department at the Ministry of Agriculture of Lithuania. Rolf Einar Fifer, the former ambassador to the EU and to France, Chief Negotiator for various EEA EU topics, and Mr. Alan Strayman, former Chief Negotiator during Estonia's EU accession, former Ambassador of Estonia to France and Germany. We also have online Ivana Klimbush-Sensadze, that heads the Office of Integration to the EU from Verkhovna Rada, and I am Paulina Lee. I will moderate this discussion. I'm the advisor to the Deputy Prime Minister Olga Stefanishina. I would like to start from the idea that the successful getting of Ukraine into the EU and getting membership are closely related to the legislation alignment of Ukrainian legislation to the EU. Ukrainian Parliament plays big role in it. So my question will be to Mr. Korniyenko. Could you outline how the Parliament is preparing for these important processes? Are there any strategies to make this process, on the one hand, effective, but also the legislation, effective legislation has to be done? And what challenges do you see here? Thank you.
I will speak on Ukrainian. It's asking of our team of organizers of this event.
As I was told, this is a deep sense in it, because we are preparing the EU for Ukraine to be accessed. That will be actually one of the biggest conditions of the EU. We will need to build the infrastructure. And as the bearer of this language, I would like to have more people to speak Ukrainian all over the world. As the Parliament, we are already ready. We are in the process already. We started from the previous 8th convocation that actually had the amendments to the Constitution, and some clauses were brought into the Constitution about irreversibility of getting into the EU, and then association accession was that was a training camp for us, and then the ninth convocation took it up, and we actually do not start from the scratch, and we already have the foundation, and actually the condition is quite high. We have 60% of readiness on some of the chapters, and on some chapters it's 100%. So this parliament and the previous parliament actually shows that the Euro integration is the choice of Ukrainians and the people who actually went out for Maidan and the Dignity Revolution, and those who are in the war for the values of democracy for all of us. When we discovered new tasks of this roadmap, so to say, and these people who speak like this will actually live longer than us in the EU, and we have to communicate to them. So we open up new quest stages, and the Parliament actually loaded more and more into it, and there were a lot of inspiring, symbolic, ideological events like bringing in the flag of the EU into the parliament by its energy. It was for the second time. The first time it was when the Ukrainian flag was brought in back in 1991 when we brought independence. And in our convocation, we had two MPs that were in that very convocation, and they also confirmed that in energy sector, the sectors were similar. It's very important for the MPs, for the representatives of Ukraine in general. For sure, we rebuilt our work. We also introduced different technical elements that would help us faster and better to work with draft laws. We marked them, and all the countries actually did the same when they were did this accession. We also gave the responsibility for the parliament to work at this candidacy criteria, about this additional candidacy criteria. We remember there were two portions of candidacy criteria. We had 5 tasks and then 4 more. And now, when we get to the dossier, we are going to continue to work at accepting and verification of these draft laws on the one hand, and also building of work of the parliament and the government, and working at the screening reports, and then enlargement reports, decisions on different bilateral decisions and between governments. Concurrently, we will work about being for Ukraine being unique, like Ukraine facility. We actually thought about Croatia and looked into Croatian experience. We actually didn't see the tools that Ukraine has now. We can say that we are quite lucky. We are very grateful to the partners of the EU Commission and the Ministry of Economy and the Ministry of reintegration is there. It is quite structured, and our financial component of accession is there, and it helps us to plan. There is deep planning for 2 years to come. We understand that some of the draft laws still have to be discussed with the community. We actually have time to work with that. Sure thing, there are some challenges. We understand that when we speak about some fields of economy, there will be some challenges there as well. It's natural. It's communication and discussion of everything that is connected with important markets with for Ukrainians that Ukrainians would like to protect, even when they would like to get this single market. First of all, it's an agrarian field. But not only, it's also wood processing. We already have good relationships with the EU about it, protecting the food and feed industry, and also logistics issue. We understand that one of the biggest partners of ours, our friends and neighbors, is very strong in logistics. On the other hand, historically we know and we analyzed accessions. We know that accession of one big agrarian countries raises a question from the east to the west. We have this experience with our neighboring countries, and probably it will be like a wave, and it will go as far as France, Spain, and Portugal afterwards. There will be also some challenges connected with deepening into the changes into legislation, what Vice Prime Minister told us. When we speak about approximation of the regulations on some small details, only sectors are understood what's going on there. But even they might have questions, because we know that there are quite enough apocalyptic forecasts about some businesses and industries just disappearing, rebuilding. We have quite example. Our public officials started to discuss the ideas about for prohibiting plastic utensils. It raised quite big public discussion, and the government actually has to communicate that we just plan to speak. We don't speak about concrete decisions right now. It's impossible to adapt all this field right away, and there will be a lot of questions, issues like this. The deeper we get into some valuable some things that get some value, the more discussions we will have. There are a lot of discussions right now about enlargement of rights and possibilities of different layers of society, especially when we speak about minorities. For example, about national minorities and other minorities, it's always brought about discussion. We need to protect our cultural space, but also there could be liberty and conservative parts of the society, let's say, about improvement of sexual minorities. When we speak about the rights of the citizen of the EU, the discussions will be even larger, because it's about changes into constitution, because our founders made it quite difficult. Without the a decision from the Constitution Court, it's not possible. Two-thirds of the parliament also have to approve it. I can tell you that it's quite a difficult step, and it won't be possible when there's no consensus in the society. The changes in the Constitution will not be about minorities or plastic dishware, but it will be about citizenship, about being in the country without any conditions, especially for students, retirees, or if you work, to be in the country for 3 months without any conditions. So far, people from other countries don't have such rights according to our constitutions. That's also election rights. There will be a big discussion, I guarantee you, about it. I'm the one who thinks about the democracy on the election, passive law, active law, being having a possibility for a citizen of Belgium to be the mayor in Kyiv. That will bring a lot of discussion, you name it. There are some advantages also. I would say we have some time to make some difficult decisions and to communicate them. So far, we are going through screening, and I believe that we have half a year or 1 year about time handicap, and while we are through screening and enlargement reports, and while Poland is heading the EU, then we will have time for opening, time I hope for opening clusters and then promotion. We just have enough time to communicate with the society. That's exactly what I'm talking about with the representatives of the local self-governance, representatives of communities. We speak to them. I already lectured to the students, and I am ready to lecture to different audiences. We need to explain to people how it works, what it is all about, how everything started, why it is like this, what is consensus, what is looking for consensuses, and what will be the result for every Ukrainian? What are the myths? How these myths will be debunked? There is a myth that everyone is going to get a direct financial support. We are not sure about it. And under conditions, as it was said about social media, about new media space, believe me, Russian Federation will do everything it can, and will come up with new methods to put obstacles on Euro integration of Ukraine. Even if they formally say we don't mind against it, believe me, there will be a lot of resistance. They will speak to different parties. Eurosceptics will go into the parliament and taking advantage of making these decisions. They will bring up some decisions. So now we have this opportunity to communicate with the society in a maximum manner, especially about some difficult reforms. Communicate with sectors, agrarians, metallurgists, those who will be in your situation. Communicate with the youth who will be actually living in 5 or 7 years. If we actually want to have people who will be in the EU in 10 years, we have to actually explain to them right now where they will end up in and how they can exercise their rights. In the same way, we have to solve some issues on safety, the role of Ukraine as one of the founders of safety and security, the labor force issue, which is very critical for many countries, migration rules, migration policy, but we also have a lack of resources, and Ukraine will be one of the centers of migration. But we actually have to speak to our society on our way to the EU. And our convocation actually has this mission just to start, because actually we already are over time in the parliament, and unfortunately it is dragged, and it's already more than half a year, and more than that, we actually don't know when the election will take place in Ukraine, but we have to take everything so as this additional time that we have, we can benefit for the country. So European integration agenda is very important. It's different legislation on accession, on Ukraine facilities, on that we understand that they are going to work in IKEA 2 years later. We take them now because we don't have any problems with the regulation on this, but also rebuilding the processes within the Parliament, we have a fast pace. I would like to thank you for tomorrow. It's very important for us, for our deep state, to understand what it takes, how everything is going to work, so as our research work, people understand better how they work as a team. So we will be very grateful for this continuous support. Thank you. Thank you, Oleksandr. We are sure that the Parliament is ready, understands all the challenges, and ready to work now in the direction that is needed. It's very important that you have the communication with all the stakeholders. We will speak about it later. And another thing about this, what you said, we have to deeply immerse into legislation, and this bilateral screening that took place in Brussels. We were told by the colleagues from the EU Commission that the issue of approximation of the legislation was there. Now we are getting to alignment, which we need to take in order to have the accession to the EU. I would like to tell more. Ivana Klempush-Tsintsadze, she's the MP. She's the chair of Verkhovna Rada Committee on Ukraine's integration into the EU, and Ms. Ivana Klempush-Tsintsadze was also vice president for Euro integration.
Хотіла продовжити нашу дискусію і перейти до пана Стефана Йоганнесона.
Now I would like to move to Mr. Jóhannesson. Due to the special way of the Iceland to the EU, we know that Iceland is deeply integrated into various sectors, including the Schengen area, and yet it did not acquire membership. As the former chief negotiator, what insights could you share about the negotiations? What were the challenges? Or could you please tell us about any special strategies and reforms which Iceland accomplished or prioritized in order to approximate its internal policy to the standards of the EU?
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here. Was here 10 years ago as I was seconded by my government to work for the OSCE, and I was the team leader for the monitoring team here in Ukraine at a very difficult time then. And here I am again in a new context, and again it's an honor for me to be here. I would like to put the accession process of Iceland and our application a bit into context. Högni, my compatriot, just touched upon it in the previous panel. And back in 2008, you may recall that Iceland suffered a very serious economic crisis. The three major banks collapsed within 1 week. That was the backdrop to the application, you could argue. We had elections soon after the collapse. We had a new government, center-left government, and the coalition agreed to apply for membership. And we applied in June 2009 under the Swedish presidency. It was Carl Bildt, the foreign minister, who received the application, and the Swedes were extremely supportive to our application. Now, so the application, our aspirations at that time were very much driven by economic aspirations. Our currency, a footnote here, Iceland is the smallest economy in the world with an independent currency, the Icelandic krona. So it's by nature very volatile. it collapsed 60 to 80%, depending on what reference you use. Interest rates went through the roof. Debt by people and the housing prices collapsed and so on and so forth. People lost their savings and people were traumatized. So in a way, we had a crisis as a catalyst for our aspirations or application. And this was the first time we applied for membership. Unlike Norway, which has done it twice and rejected membership twice, this was our first time. And what were the challenges? Actually, and again, Högni touched upon it, it was not least the internal politics that were very difficult, because we did not have the level of consensus you have about your European aspirations or EU aspirations. And the public opinion was quite divided, but there was strong support for the process and the application and to finish the negotiations and then have a referendum on the conclusions of the accession negotiations. People were more divided on whether it might be good for Iceland to actually join. And the main challenges in terms of acquis, if you will, were fisheries and agriculture, because through the EEA agreement, we have actually adopted the lion's share of the acquis communautaire. So the EEA agreement, it's a very sui generis, very special arrangement we have with the EU, because we are members of the internal market, although we are not members of the EU. But outside the EEA, our fisheries, agriculture, regional policies, the EMU, the euro, and it's not the customs union either. So these were the big substantial issues we would need to align our domestic legislation to. And so I would say the two biggest of these would be the fisheries and agriculture. Then we had some smaller issues economically, like whaling, which was a big issue for the EU and probably would have been one of the last issues resolved in the negotiations had they been concluded. Now, what happened then, and this is a kind of an external factor, is that after we had initiated the negotiation process in the fall of 2009, the Eurozone debt crisis kicked in. Now, that really undermined our argument for membership, because we, in a way, through the EEA, we, European Economic Area, we have full access to the internal market, free movement of labor, capital, services, and goods. So people started to argue more strongly, why on earth should we join? Look at what's happening in the EU. Greece, Spain, really serious economic crisis. At the same time, partly due to the weak currency, the Icelandic krona, our export sector started to really bounce back, and our economy started to bounce back around 2010. So that also was an argument for the EU skeptics, that we should actually be probably our interests are better served outside the European Union. Also, we had elections in 2013. And a new government came in, a center-right government with a different policy, and they decided finally that our interests would be better served outside the EU, so they stopped the negotiations. So you could say that we are, and you talked about training camp, the EEA is a very tough boot camp actually for EU membership. So actually we are very well positioned if we ever decide to join or apply and try to join the EU, because we have actually integrated the lion's share of the acquis communautaire, and we know the animal. We are very used to this collaboration through the EA. And you talked about capacity problems you have, and I fully understand that. You are obviously extremely strained with the enormous challenges you are facing. While Iceland has capacity problems, we are only now 400,000 people. We were back then something like 320,000. We would have been the smallest member of the EU. The central government, our officials, secretaries, assistants, we are all together around 700 individuals. But we managed to do it. We managed to do all the necessary things. We managed to align through the EA constantly. So you have to prioritize, as Maria and others said, pick your fights. Don't ask for adaptations, special solutions, unless it's absolutely necessary. It should be few and far between. You will set the pace inter alia through how quickly you manage to align to the EU and the EU acquis. And it's very important, one advice or two I want to add. I tend to agree with the previous speakers in the other panels. All the advice that has been given is very good. It's also very important for your negotiators to have a clear mandate, that they have the capacity to go to Brussels, engage with the Commission, and the Commission, again, is your friend, and capitals, EU Parliament, and the domestic front, the stakeholders here. That was probably one of the toughest challenges for us, the negotiators of Iceland. That was to deal with the stakeholders and the domestic fronts and the political skepticism back home. So I think I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much.
Дякую вам велике. Я б хотіла перейти до нашого наступного.
I would like to move to the next speaker. And also I will review the speech of Mr. Jóhannesson in the context of the question to all of the speakers a bit later. Mr. Čiakas, we heard from quite many speakers about the agricultural sector, that the negotiations on those chapters can be most intense because no doubt Ukraine is agricultural, and by gross output of crops, none of the EU countries cannot compare itself to Ukraine, and the colleagues from our line ministry have advised that Ukraine can cover all of the needs of EU for the agricultural products. Due to your extensive experience in the field of agriculture and European integration in the agricultural field, what are the key reforms carried out by Lithuania in the agricultural sector in order to efficiently and successfully join the European Union?
Hello to everyone. Thank you for the question. It's a great pleasure for me to participate in this panel, and I really wish our Ukrainian colleagues success in the way towards the accession to EU. Yes, as you correctly mentioned, my experience is in the area of agriculture, and it's still important in agriculture. It was much more important at the date of accession, because big part of the society was involved in agriculture. The volumes of productions we had very high. And yes, and as always, our chief negotiator mentioned that agriculture, chapter number 7, was extremely difficult, extremely sensitive, and it was a lot of problems, a lot of discussions, and huge job had to be done in order to align our legislation. And in fact, what your question is about the reforms, I would say 3 types of the reforms. One kind of reform is legislative reform, that like in every chapter, in every way, we had to read and analyze, and all our experts had to read and analyze EU acquis to understand what it's about, and to prepare necessary legal acts or whether it is a law, whether it's a governmental decree, whether it's a ministerial decree, or another kind of legal act. And that's one step. Another step is to ensure that those legal acts are functioning. That relates to institutional reform. And in the area of agriculture, we know that it's a common market organization. It's common agricultural policy. It operates in the whole EU in similar principles. But to administer that support, we need kind of elements. It's the integrated administration and control system, land parcel identification system, farm accountancy data network, and we must have institution which is responsible for dissemination of the support granted for common agricultural policy, so-called paying agencies in the member states. So we didn't have all those things. We have our national agricultural policy, we have our national institutions, and we need to establish. And it's not simply establish what we want. Paying agency must be accredited, certified. It's like a small bank in agriculture. Small bank in agriculture which provides EU support for the farmers according to the programs prepared. And this structure had to be built. I wouldn't say from the scratch, but from the beginning, because we didn't have all that. Another important issue is that it's veterinary and phytosanitary requirements. Somebody treat them as separate issue, somebody put them into the agricultural sector, but plant health, animal health, and food health are very, very important. For instance, we didn't have, we advanced with the milk processing industry. It was quite ready, and it was not big challenge for them, but meat processing industry, we had to invest a lot, business had invest a lot in order to have this industry ready to meet EU requirements. And one of the transitional period was related to meat processing industry, but we didn't comply fully from the date of accession, from the 1st of May 2004. We had 3-year transitional period just to catch up. And my advice would be also to you, well, ask the Commission, use transitional period where you are not able to comply with the requirements, but it doesn't mean that you may have them hundreds, and it doesn't mean that they will be forever. You must have clear action plan, how you are going to adjust your sector within agreed transitional period. Also, for us, a very, very sensitive issue was in the chapter. What relates very much to agriculture. It's a acquisition of agricultural land by foreigners. It's a free movement of capital. Chapter free movement of capital. Well, our farming society, politicians, it was very difficult for them to agree with that chapter. And main arguments, it was we were afraid that because of cheap land, people from EU member states come, buys land, and it will block. That fact will block the possibility for our farming society to develop. Because at that moment, at the accession negotiations, common agricultural policy had a lot of production quotas, let's say sugar quota, dairy quota, other quotas, and it means if you want to be competitive, you need to have sufficient amount of production facilities and abilities. So and agricultural sector was very, very sensitive, and I remember we all together during the process of negotiations requested around 14 transitional periods in different areas. We succeeded in 6. We couldn't persuade the Commission in other areas. So process quite complex, but also talking about the reform, we need to persuade our farming society about the benefit of the common agricultural policy. We hear about the information campaigns and information of the society. Like now I'm sitting here, I remember several times I was sitting in front of the farming society, and they couldn't believe that common agricultural policy provides with the support. They asking me why you should support agriculture. Why? Nobody gives money for that. Well, we have to explain what the essence of common agricultural policy, what are main principles, and we finally somehow succeeded for farmers to persuade. We persuaded them. They realized what's a key community in agriculture, what are benefits, what are threats, what they must be ready for, and so it was not easy chapter. And well, it's a great pleasure that I had such an experience, because it was an excellent exercise, and which helped to broaden your way of thinking. So.
Дякую вам велике. Я думаю, що з огляду на вашу відповідь на моє запитання, я думаю, що колеги з профільного міністерства, вони дуже радіють, що вони матимуть.
Thank you for your answer, and having a person such an Euro-integration agrarian counselor would be a great asset. Now I would like to get to Rolf Einar Pfeffer. My intention in the beginning actually was to ask about economical integration, but taking into account big experience on the law of Mr. Pfeffer, I would like to change my question, because my expertise is also in legislation. As of now, Ukraine is preparing to open the first chapter, its fundamentals, that opens the first and closes the last. And Ukraine is proposed to prepare the roadmap in the supreme law about opening the fundamentals cluster. We know that these questions will be integral part into the roadmap with supremacy of law, fighting corruption, justice, safety, and freedom. Usually, it doesn't have solid acquis. There we speak about Venice Commission. We also have about Justice Court resolution. So I have the question: how Ukraine has to communicate together with the European Commission that this framework is not too broad, not too wide, and we can more precisely write down the criteria that Ukraine has to perform in order to meet the requirements of supremacy of law. Thank you.
Very much, Pauline. Does it work? Yes. It works. Let me first say that I'm truly impressed and touched by the courage, the resilience, and the positive energy I've been witnessing. It's my first time in Kyiv, but I can assure you that you have a strong basis of support in the Norwegian population for the exemplary resilience and courage you're showing. So as an expression of that, the Norwegian government managed to negotiate a cross-party support in the Norwegian parliament, a 5-year plan called the Nansen program, which guarantees a financial framework for support both for military and civilian support. And the idea was to basically not or to avoid any uncertainty relating to general elections that will take place within a few years' time in Norway. So let me assure you of that. And then let me also express my deep thanks to Sweden for the initiative to gather these expertise from the Nordic Baltic group. And I have listened carefully to colleagues on this and previous panels. I can just say that you have in this group a true group of friends who wish you the very best and who have different areas of expertise and background, some of them extremely impressive, I must say. So I should say on my side, my key aim is to understand and learn and listen, because basically you are taking decisions, you are deciding priorities, and the only way I personally could be of any support is to basically engage in responding to questions as to whether it might make sense in a broader sense. Now, you asked about rule of law. Let me just say that I think that based on my own experience, one should not confuse the idea of formal adoption of rules and what is required in order to make those rules work. So you need implementation, you need broader understanding. You actually need to make sure that you don't just have a formal amendment or set of changes in the law books. You basically have to have a change of systemic approach. Because at the end of the day, and this is important for the single market, to which Norway is associated, as Iceland is, but for a number of other purposes, single market cannot work. A number of things cannot work unless the fundamentals are predictable. So if I may try to say that, on the one hand, the cluster on fundamentals, as far as I understand it, is basically the foundations of predictability. Because how does the EU law work? I mean, most issues have to be dealt with locally by local courts, local administrations, local authorities that may have a particular role to supervise, control, or monitor what is happening. Now, this is not a terribly difficult thing if you explain the basics. If you go into the technical solutions, sometimes you need a bunch of lawyers to analyze very precisely. But the fundamentals, in my view, are very simple. And that is a key message, I think. And that is that you want to make sure that whether it's the business sector, economic operators, whether it's civil society, whether it is consumers or whoever, that they can rely on the mutual trust that exists between different systems in Europe, different courts, different administrations, as to basic application of, for instance, some requirements of transparency, that you can trust that certain procedures stem from institutions that are independent and basically also impartial. And that may require, in some cases, a lot of reforms. But I think the best friends to understand the need for those things are civil society. They are the economic operators. And you will find a number of friends if you understand the fundamentals. Because in order to invest, you want to have the basic certainty and predictability as to what happens with your money. If you want to engage in different operations, you want to have basic certainty. So that is, I think, my main message. And in that sense, Ukraine is not a newcomer to those issues. Ukraine knows about the Venice Commission, I think you referred to, the Council of Europe, but also a number of issues that have been actively already in process with the European Commission and others. It may concern the very important fight against corruption. It may have to do also with the importance of understanding the prohibition against discrimination of different groups. I think those are fundamentals. So my best support would be basically to be quite, since we are your best friends, to be absolutely clear on the fact that you shouldn't spend time thinking about how you can circumvent or amend the fundamentals. The fundamentals basically have to be integrated, not just by formal adoption of legislation, but basically by making sure that those fundamental principles are fully understood and that they penetrate into the systems and they're perceived as a new social contract, which implies also more trust in democratic institutions, in independent courts, in prosecution authorities, in those who will have responsibility to vet, protect, data protection, for instance. All those issues in which Ukraine is fantastically advanced already. But think of the new challenges in the digital world. My view, Europe is leading in the work, trying to civilize, you could say, the cyberspace or internet or the digital connectivity we have. In order to do that, you need to have the fundamentals in place. So sorry for being repetitive, but I think this is not an issue of legal formalism. It's an issue of deep understanding of what will also lead to mobilization of broader support to your cause in many European countries, because many look at what you're doing as a huge project of reforms and democratization and integration, which has security considerations and implications, but also more fundamental processes, which we follow very closely indeed, and we take a deep interest in what the state institutions and civil society are doing in Ukraine. So you're not alone. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Дякую вам велике. Тоді
Thank you so much. And now we are getting to our next speaker, Mr. Strainman. Estonia is famous for their overall digitalization and electronic governance. How did it influence and help the integration of Estonia to the EU?
Good afternoon to everybody, and thank you very much for the organizers. It's a little bit difficult to be the last one speaking, of course, because so much has been said, and that's a very specific question you have asked me. And actually, I must give you an easy answer. It didn't have much impact, because if you think when we started in 1997, I don't even remember that we were using internet at these days, not to say anything about those social media things and all very complex programs. And I told my colleagues, of course, there were some rudimentary solutions, and I told my colleagues previously, there was, however, one thing where we used that, because we really, in 1996, we started to equip our schools with computers. It was a big program called Tiger Leap. But otherwise, we used computers really as a text machines or whatever. So it was all over the world like that. But because we were in a very special situation, in a way, even I would dare to compare it with Ukraine, of course, leaving aside the war. Estonia was not a very much expected beginner in the accession negotiation process. We had quite a lot of voices against the Estonian being involved in the accession process. I won't be calling all these states who were against, but you can find out about that more in history books. So we had to make a huge diplomatic effort, actually, to get as at least one of the Baltic countries and the first country from the former Soviet empire, so to say, into the West, into Europe. And that was critically important. If we had failed, perhaps we could be still negotiating with Ukraine, or perhaps not today, but we would have delayed many, many years our accession and the whole Baltic countries' accession. So it was strategically extremely important. We made a lot of diplomatic efforts. I will not get into that. But when we had received an invitation, of course, we were euphoric, like Ukraine today. The problem was that we had about 3 months to get us ready for the opening of negotiations. And I had a huge dilemma, because most of the experts in Estonia knew nothing about the EU, not to say about anything about the acquis communautaire, the common legislative body of the EU. So I had really a big problem what to do, because on the opening of the negotiations, we had to tell the Estonian people, who were relatively skeptical about the accession, what shall it be about? Where are we jumping now? And then, because the acquis communautaire is extremely huge body, these days, I think it was 20,000 legal acts. Today it's perhaps 30, 40,000. And that had to be gone through in only a calculated days. And then I ordered some Estonian computer companies to give us a computer program so that we could at least have something where all the experts of different ministries could go through the legal acts and then leave a comment. Because many of the EU legal acts, they relate to many different agencies. It's not only the Ministry of Agriculture or the Ministry of Finance. It's very interlinked with many, many other agencies. So that's how, that was the beginning where we really got the first foundation for our negotiating position. So yes, as an answer to a question, we had something, but it was very, very rudimentary, done overnight, I think in 24 hours, but it was very helpful. Later on, of course, we had very substantive databases and together on our side and on the Commission side. So a brief answer to your question, but of course, the devil is always in the details. Thank you.
Дякую вам велике. Зараз я б хотіла надати слово пані Іванні Климпуш-Цинцадзе. Пані Івано, до мене у вас є наступне питання з огляду на ваш великий досвід і практичної євроінтеграції, політичної євроінтеграції. Ви очолюєте профільний комітет у Верховній Раді. Які ви бачите найбільші виклики для України на шляху до членства в Європейському Союзі, зважаючи на поточний геополітичний та внутрішньодержавні ландшафти?
Thank you very much. Just a few words to our colleagues in English, and then I'll turn into Ukrainian. I'm very happy to welcome all of you, and I'm very thrilled that Ukraine will benefit from the experience of such a renowned group of people. And I'm sorry that I cannot be there with you today, being on another business trip, but I hope that we will be able to work together also with the Parliament. And so greetings also from our committee on Ukraine's integration into the EU. And so maybe one important thing to add to what Oleksandr was saying at the beginning of this panel, that yes, I think for Ukraine, the European integration is not only a strategic goal that is set in the constitution of Ukraine, but it's definitely part of the societal belief and societal devotion to freedom, to democracy, and societal dream to build a country based on the rule of law, based on the justice, based on all those fundamentals that we will have to deal with. And this is going on for many years. I think it's much earlier than the Revolution of Dignity. We have shown our ability to defend those values, and today, on the backdrop of this brutal war, Ukraine has this incredible ray of light at the end of the tunnel that was given by all your nations, or majority of your nations who are members of the EU. And we are extremely grateful, and I think we all understand also the responsibility that lies for the President of Ukraine, for the government and the Parliament of Ukraine, not to lose this historic chance. Тепер до вашого питання, пані Поліно. Дійсно, дуже багато...
About your question, a lot has been said. I wouldn't like to repeat that myself, but all of us have to think very well. Citizens of Ukraine has a lot of support of our membership in the EU and NATO. We understand how emotional this support is, and for us it's concurrently is an opportunity and a challenge to retain this support during the accession. We have to understand also that Ukraine, while during the war and all the work that has been done for the previous 10 years from the Revolution of Dignity, already received from the EU that the political advance payments is not something that we are going to base our work on. It's a complicated work, and it will be communication with the society. Oleksandr also said that we need to take into our path all the Ukrainian stakeholders. It's a very important task, and this task is to be very difficult to execute, because all the processes of communications are difficult. It's difficult to engage new actors, that their opinion is very important for us, so as to retain this society support that we have now. That's the first thing. Secondly, you spoke on the panel about cluster bases, chapter bases, and we do understand that despite this devotion of Ukrainian society to protect democratic values, concurrently, we have a lot of work ahead, so as not to work in the legislation, but also to support it in such a way that we all understand that Ukrainian society, Ukrainian business environment, Ukrainian state machine works on the fairness and justice basis. It means that we have to deal with some challenges now. I think that it is crucial to reinforce the balance of powers and the balance of relationships between state institutions, despite the military environment, to work at the capacities of the state and public work. Without it, it will be difficult to work. The capacities of the civil servants on the level of the ministry, parliament is crucial as well to pursue all these tasks, and it's very important to work through the procedures on interaction between the parliament and government, that some rudimentary things that we still based on have to be renewed according to the new tasks and new opportunities that Ukraine has, as Ukraine that already has negotiations about EU accession. It means also that there is a serious internal dialogue in the parliament and engaging all the parliamentary actions, A, dialogue, B, working at the solutions and getting mutual results. We know that the experience of other countries says that the political consensus inside the legislative body is a principle for of the process. Another thing,
most of the countries that were successful in the EU accession, the great role, or the most important role, was played by the governments. And the government capacity made it possible to develop the decisions which predominantly have been adopted by the parliaments with no additional scrutiny, and redevelopment at the stage of the parliament. Our experience tells us that the parliaments, including our parliamentary committee, which I'm a chairperson of, has to do a lot of additional work in order to scrutinize the draft legislation, even those submitted by the government, to finalize them along with the sectoral committees, and also with the government, with involvement of government members, and with involvement of our European counterparts to that process, to make sure that those developments have confirmed their effectiveness would become part of our internal political and legislative process. We need to change the rules and procedures, including the rules of the Parliament of Ukraine, and to my opinion, finally to find political will, which was not found in the Parliament of 8th Convocation or in the Parliament of 9th Convocation, to approve the new law on the general mechanism of promotion towards our objective of EU membership. This would ensure the transparent rules of the game and would also allow us to be even more successful in this process in which we are today. I hope that the experience of our colleagues from different countries, including Nordic countries and Baltic countries, will be useful for us, that those processes today which are now being discussed at the level of the Parliament, also between the Parliament and the government, would come to the straight line, which will be the path for us to move forward. Thank you, Ivana. We heard a lot from the colleagues about Euroscepticism in different periods of as countries moved towards EU accession. Lately, Ukraine had a lot of victories in the field of European integration, and this has been a consolidating factor for Ukrainian society, as many people admit. And now we are entering a technical process of approximation towards acquis communautaire. To your mind, how could we keep that positive trend and our citizens do not become tired of European integration? We need to be honest with our society. We don't have to create unjustified expectations from this process. We cannot promise that within 2 years we shall be fully prepared towards membership in the EU, because obviously this is first impossible, and also after those 2 years Ukrainian society will have objective questions. Why we are not yet ready, and whose fault is that? And there will be a temptation to blame our European partners of it, which cannot be allowed. Secondly, in order to keep that support, and we understand that the support will fluctuate, the same as it happened in every country. Moreover, a support of the country which is bleeding and which emotionally and psychologically is depleted will also sustain such serious fluctuations, unless we ensure continuous multi-layer dialogue, as well as with different society groups, and also unless we provide our awareness, serious awareness activity at every level, which will translate from the bird language, as I joke, from the bureaucratic language into their normal language, that people would understand, to tell them what we are aspiring for. Another thing of how shall we keep that support, how we preserve the support, is about the trust between ourselves and our counterparts. Because we heard from the colleagues from Estonia that a lot of diplomatic work was carried out in order to receive support from the EU member countries about future Estonian membership. In the same way, we need to preserve the support that we currently have and to expand it for the intentional support, both of the country which fights against aggressive dictatorship and their empire regime, and also as a society, support to the society which demonstrates incredible positive results of internal transformations, and the country which demonstrates such positive results of internal transformations. And it means that from the ambitions and tasks and slogans and expectations, we need to move to the results. This will make it possible to keep the trust with the counterparts, and at the same time that trust can be converted into further proactive position of European Union to make sure that Ukraine advances and Ukraine is also integrated at various levels, including the civil society, including cultural domain, and including human interaction and communications. In addition to the parliamentary contacts or the government contacts and the contacts at the level of heads of states and governments, also human integration with European processes. Those things, as it looks to me, will make it possible for us also to receive from the European Union both the support and also understanding of certain exceptions that one will have to make for the transitional periods, and the understanding of additional instruments that we shall yet have to receive outside of Ukraine facility, that we now have as a basic instrument for our interaction, as including the budget support and the reform support, to make sure that we both have a success, because it's a joint interest of Ukrainian state and society and also European Union, that Ukraine manages to do it, and that we jointly become unified and much more powerful geopolitical and geo-economic player in the world with Ukraine's membership in the EU. Thank you very much indeed for this deliberate, for this wide answer. I request that our colleagues to explain how did they overcome the challenge of Euroscepticism at the stage of accession, and I will start with Mr. Streyman.
Thank you very much. Yes, perhaps my country was a little bit different. As I said, we had quite a substantive opposition to the accession in the beginning of the negotiations. 6 years later, when we were heading for the referendum, the majority was in favor. Nevertheless, we had one major party, which always remained suspicious. But finally, they said that they just leave it up to the individual deputies to vote for the membership, because the referendum was not binding, but all political parties had declared that they will follow the results of the referendum. We had during the negotiations opinion polls done regularly on the work of the negotiation team. And that was, I'm proud of that, because we were more popular than the government. So, which I think very much helped actually to persuade and convince ordinary people on the street, so to say, that we are working for them. It's something that really everybody will benefit. So we are very open. We didn't publicize our open positions as Icelandic colleagues later did. But basically, we only took off the titles and then distributed them, saying that that's a background information, but actually it was almost our text of our position papers. But we didn't want to negotiate through the media, so that was our principle. The parliament, because we really have distinguished members of the parliament present, I couldn't stress more the importance of the political parties in the parliament. We received a lot of support from the parliament as such. They were very positive. Of course, we established a kind of a European integration committee, which was coordinating within the parliament all the activities, and they were very helpful. In spite of that, some politicians really being in the opposition and then trying to say, no, it's. I was actually accused during the negotiations being too fast, being too slow, being member of any of the government parties, being member of the opposition parties. I've never been a politician. So really, it was tough, actually. People had all kinds of conspiracy theories. And I must stress that really, under this openness, we also financed the anti-accession campaign. We trusted the people, actually. And I think on the eve of the referendum, we said that if you really don't know what the EU is, because you cannot reach everybody. You cannot reach everybody. You cannot explain all the technicalities. We said that just go home and use your common sense. And you have to trust your people. And that's the same thing in the negotiations. I think there is one or two remarks I would like to do. Negotiation is perhaps a cliche. It's mostly negotiation with your own people and the public and at home. With the ministries, there will be a lot of group interests in our case, and that was mentioned, is the agriculture. We had about 10% of the GDP and also 10% of the labor was involved in agriculture. Today it's 3%, so they went through a very substantive change in very few years. There's still a debate whether it was necessary, whether it was good policy. So that was very much debated in the parliament. But apart from the agriculture, the parliament really didn't get into very substantive details. Now, perhaps something which can be misleading when you really discuss these negotiations and early accession is, as I said, the member states and the Commission look from the very practical side. What are we negotiating about? Let's take a piece of the EU acquis like the Drinking Water Directive. Drinking Water Directive. You really have to convince the Commission and the member states that if you're ready, you fulfill the Drinking Water Directive. In our case, it meant that we had to rebuild all the pipe systems in all villages and municipalities. Huge work of a century almost, very expensive. If you have it all done, okay, you can be the member tomorrow. It's as easy as it is. If you don't have it, then you have to have a clear plan how and when you can do it. And you can take hundreds of issues like that. So, I mean, yes, politically you have to have the political guidelines, but the implementation is very, very important. You cannot really avoid it. So that's my message about the negotiations and the speed of that. But of course, there are many other issues. I mean, we had in Estonia really lots of debates, and we were sometimes too fast. I must admit, too fast. And why? Because the some groups in the society, they were interested in adapting faster than necessary, or perhaps faster than it was possible, because they could. Well, they hoped that they would get fast access to the EU market. But the problem is that if you really don't fill the phytosanitary requirements, then you're not allowed the access to the EU market. If you don't have these two washing bins in every small village shop, you cannot keep the shop. They were closed down in Estonia in hundreds. So things like that sometimes worked against us because they were not really thoroughly considered. It's easy to give promises for the ministry officials that we can do it tomorrow. And we had several times the heads of the working groups were sitting facing me over the table and telling me that, oh, in 3 years' time we have this running. And I asked them, how do you get the money for that? They had no answers for that. So there you are. But we were very friendly, and we were trying always to look for solutions and find ways out in a transparent way. And we had a principle that we didn't go Brussels before we had sorted out everything at home, that our home courtyard was clean. Thank you.
Так, пан Фіфа, прошу, вам слово.
Thank you very much. I think Allard put his finger on key issues. It has also to do, if I may go back to fundamentals, in terms of transparency and possibilities of participation, because when you will have to confront, as we all do, disinformation, misinformation, heated political debates, where maybe one piece of detail is blown sometimes totally out of proportion, and when you lose overall view of things, it's very important that not only government or negotiators are the ones to explain and defend what one is doing. So the question is then how to manage information, and I think one gains a lot in terms of building up trust and resilience, and Ukrainians are great at understanding the role of resilience in building in two elements which I think are absolutely essential to communication strategies. One is quality of information, because you don't want to be caught telling things that are not truthful. So that requires the engagement of all the competent forces to contribute to an enlightened debate. So quality is important. Conciseness is also important. We heard in a former panel how important it was to do messaging, which projects unity of purpose on behalf of a country, but also a relative simplicity in terms of what is it all about. So of course, if you start when discussing reform of all the pipes in a country by certain issues which only make plumbers happy because they will gain a lot of money. If you start in the other end and start talking about the health benefits, etc., I can vouch for the fact that air quality in Oslo and other Norwegian cities was immensely helped by EU regulations concerning air pollution. And we had a huge debate about that. But the messaging was clear. What is the purpose here? And not start in the wrong end. So quality, conciseness, and then frequency. If you provide frequent enough updates, you enable a number of stakeholders to prolong this conversation in the fora where you could otherwise have fertile grounds for disinformation and the like. So what I'm saying is that this is like Sisyphus rolling a stone. You're never actually in where you want to end up. It's a continuous process. But I think Allah provided practical examples, which are very valuable.
Дякую велике. Я попрошу тоді наступного спікера. Yes.
Yes. In our country, also before accession to the EU, farming society was not so positive about the accession. We also had to do a lot of information work to provide them with all information about the common agricultural policy, about the results of negotiations, in order to provide them with the full and relevant information. And we just try to be very frank and very open, not to hide something. And we didn't have at that time Facebook, WhatsApp, Signals, and other applications. It was dissemination, channels of dissemination informations were just regular meetings, discussion by phones with umbrella NGOs, also emails. But what we did, we also prepared a lot of brochures, booklets, a lot of information, printouts, just to disseminate to the farming society, to just let them know what they could expect. We also made a specific, like one-page case study. Farmer has 20 hectares of land. Just for example, 10 cows, 20 pigs, produces cereals, rapeseed. What can he expect? What are requirements? What farmer must do? What can he expect? What kind of support? What kind of veterinary phytosanitary requirements? And we just try to provide them with such a specific case-based information. And also, yes, we had a referendum in our country, and I think it's very much such activity contributed to the result of the referendum, because altogether, I don't know, I cannot tell what was a farmer's voice, but altogether we had 89% of people in favor of the accession to EU. Participation was 65% in the referendum, and 89% in favor of the accession to EU. So it was a big switch from negative aspect towards very positive aspects, because great job was done concerning dissemination of information. And we also had to fight with a kind of, at that time we didn't use such a word, but today it's well known, fake news, something like that. For instance, in Lithuania we have still have very popular meal we call zeppelins in English. It's smashed potatoes with a meat inside. Probably some countries also have it. It was message that after accession to EU, you lose your identity. You cannot eat. You cannot produce zeppelini because of some reasons and so on. Because it doesn't meet some requirements. It's even difficult to explain. But and in other cases as well, you also always had to fight with some fake news which were just spread out. But social networks were not so available. And for them, it was more difficult to produce booklets about fake news. For us, it was easier to produce booklets with the right news. So, we have outcome of the referendum that, as I mentioned, very, very positive aspects. And colleague mentioned, he was in favor of one party, opposition. I was several times claimed as a liar because I'm telling nonsenses, and I still keep in mind. I still remember those claims, and I still following one agricultural company. The head of that company at that time, she also used that word against me, but they're just benefiting very much from the EU single market, from the possibilities, from the support they receive, and I don't know if she remember what words she used against me. So.
Дякую вам велике. Пане Йоганнес, саме ви в своєму виступі...
You actually spoke about skepticism that people in Iceland said, Mr. Jóhannesson. How this situation actually was overcome, and what is the situation now?
Well, the short answer is that it wasn't actually overcome. And the trend actually in Iceland was in the opposite direction from what happened, for example, in Estonia, where the support was much greater in the beginning, when people were more traumatized after the collapse of the banks, and people really thought that we were going down the drain and our currency was useless, and we needed to join to the EU to in the long run to be able to adopt the euro, a bigger, much bigger currency and more stable. But the public opinion was always quite supportive of the accession process as such, and people wanted to see the result and have a referendum on the accession protocol. We never got to that point because, as I said, we had in the meantime elections, a new government that decided to stop the negotiations. They changed the policy or had a new policy. And there was a huge uproar about that in Iceland, and accused the new government of not being democratic. The previous parliament had, through a democratic process, decided to mandate the government, the executive branch, to apply and negotiate membership. And as I said, the new government stopped it. And there was severe criticism of the government for not having allowed us to conclude and then put the accession protocol to a referendum. And one of our arguments with regard to why EU membership would be better for Iceland than the EEA agreement, why we should take the full step and join, is the democratic deficit. In the EEA, we do not sit at the table where the decisions are taken eventually, and we lose sight of the rules, the acquis is the EU jargon, when the parliament is consulted on the draft acquis that eventually will become an EEA rule, and we will need to take it back home and adopt it in our domestic legislation. But we have access to the decision shaping in the expert groups in the Commission. But again, when the actual decisions are taken, we do not sit at the table. So we have another process to take it into the EEA and then adopt it domestically. But the average Joe in Iceland doesn't care whether some bureaucrat or even politicians are sitting at the table where these decisions are taken, as long as his rights and benefits are secured. And as long as they can move freely around Europe, being part of Schengen, being part of free movement of labor, that they can sell their goods, we can import, so if you will, I don't want to call it a problem, but in a way, the problem is that we have a good arrangement with the EU where our trade and economic interests are already secured, and you need something really more to convince the public. I think that we should take the step, because while we have this access to the internal market and part of it, again, the sensitive sectors of fisheries, which is a hugely important sector in Iceland, it's not part of it. So we have never had to adopt or align to the so-called common fisheries policy of the EU, and neither the common agricultural policy, because agriculture in Iceland is very different from that of mainland of Europe. We are an Arctic nation. We have very limited agriculture. We're not competitive at all in terms of prices, maybe in terms of quality, we would like to think, but not prices. So we had huge resistance from the farmers. We tried to let them talk to our Finnish friends who had the similar situation. The farmers in Finland were extremely skeptical, but they got a good solution. And today, I think they're one of the strongest supporters of EU membership in Finland. So, and I think part of the trick is also to get out of the echo chambers. When we have these public events, we tend to get people that are interested and positive with regard to the European project. The trick is to reach to those that are skeptical. That's extremely important. While I was chief negotiator, I had a lot of public events. I went to the rural areas, to towns, and talked to farmers and so on and so forth, trying to be objective and just to explain what this was all about and what it was not about. Because there were a lot of misconceptions. What I normally told people, I am not here to convince you that we should join the EU or not join the EU. It's not a black and white issue. There are a lot of gray shades in between in what one person or a stakeholder may think is positive, another one may think is negative. I'm here to help you to take an enlightened decision by trying objectively to describe what this is all about and what the crucial issues are for Iceland. But this is not an easy, and you talk about social media and fake news. I mean, it works both ways, because it's also very easy to use all these new platforms that are out there for fake news, for misconception, to lie to people and so on. So we really need to use these tools in a good way. Finally, I just wanted to mention, by way of conclusion, your deputy minister said that you were servants of the people. I just want to say that we here, this group, we are at your service for
Thank you
helping.
So much.
We are your friends. We want to help you to make progress.
Thank you. Пане Олександре, трошки видозмінено до вас.
Alexander, there is a question to you, because the colleagues shared their experience. We're just getting on. How can we retain this positive dynamics of reintegration? And I would like to conclude our panel. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Я думаю, що зараз
I believe that it's very important for us, the support of such experienced people, counselors from different countries, your commissioners, in order for us to keep up with the dynamics we can scale up on the government team levels. Before that, Euro integration, in Euro integration, there were 3, 6, 9 people. Probably now we have 30, and our negotiation team is about 40 people. If we get all them together, there will be about 100. What we need? We need that about 1,000 people, as many as there are officials in Iceland, maybe tens of thousands, and maybe even better that 250,000 our public servants also do this. Why? Because I believe that one of the answers to skepticism and Euro-pessimism is very fast and quality implementation of legislation on the on the executive level. If we don't do that, there will be a moment that society will ask, you vote millions of Euro integration laws, but why the situation doesn't improve where I live? Why somebody still asks for kickback or bribe? Why the official does not provide the administrative service for me in the right manner, and so on and so forth. So it's not all about Euro integration, but this is also very important. These are policies on expanding, improving of lives. That's actually people need to see the result right now, and we are still stuck here. We need to do more. Unfortunately, the capacities of the local communities is quite low to win projects, but this is exactly how people can estimate on how their lives changed. They might have the assessment on the life improvement, like in Romania, Poland, Slovakia. Why don't we still have the water pipes or a good road? Where are we going? For all this, we need capacity of service servants on the level of the state, local authorities. We have different public servants. We are not going into detail into it. Thank God, IKEA Communicate does not have the exact things, but we will approximate to Sigma standards, Euro Commission, and everything what it takes, taking into account Ukrainian specifics. To answer skepticism also, it will be in the plane of right communication. So let me also give an work how to debunk myths, how to inform people. That means that we need to do something in advance, taking into consideration that, let's say, year later, we will have the roadmap to accession. And that means that it's now that we have to inform our society with booklets and brochures for the farmers, what it will take, and the communication of very complicated matters, even if it takes time. It's one of the instruments to decrease skepticism. It's not going to be out of the blue. And the state will also support you and the fields that will be under discussion. On the other hand, we also have to forecast, and we are grateful to the European Commission and the countries that are involved in the negotiation framework, and the auxiliary documents, they actually admitted that Ukrainian legislation is ahead, and that means that these industries or laws do not have to go back. If we Ukrainians just lose our services like fintech, which is one of the first in the world, logistics, like logistical operators, the fastest in the world, then Europeans will not take the Euro integration. We have to protect these fields. There will be some discussion about Euro fintech. I'm not sure that when we speak about safety and security, there will be probably a Euro commissioner on safety, and how will military tech is going to work. But in our country, it exists already quite big. We can also show you something. There will be a lot of issues like this. We are going to work at them, we or our successors, so as not to increase Eurosceptical works from outside. We will have some Eurosceptics inside as well. And the third thing I would like to emphasize is to work with different audiences, quality communication strategies, and here we rely and we would like the civic society to work at it as well. As I already said, our civic society is one of the strongest in the world about lobbying initiatives. They are no match for others, and no law on lobbying can change something. Our experience it is quite painful. On the land reform, it shows that it can be done with the society, with NGOs and society, and we did the forums, and we did it all over the country, and we did it with agrarians. We communicated with them, and only then there were voices about the final forum. We also have the decentralization reform, which was communicated well and has very high benefits for the recipients, for local communities, for people who live on land. So if we converge communication instruments with the messages to the target audience, we can show the quality benefits for different layers of society when we enter the EU, starting from the 12-year-old child, access to education, and the pensioner that will join a different system of pension provision, and the laborer whose rights will be exercised better, and business owners who will get the benefits from access to a single market. And while having these communication strategies, we will decrease these skeptical people about Euro integration. In the beginning, there will be political forces. It's a normal thing. We see that even in the EU, they exist. We hope that we won't make it happen, that there will be even more skeptical people in Ukraine or even in the EU, because it will be the external threat for us. We can work with the capitals 24/7 with the society, but when the people become more skeptical in Europe, it will be much more difficult for us. We have to explain to our people and to their people as well. And what we actually say is our internal opportunities and resources. It's our generation that was born in independent Ukraine between two Maidans from 2013. These people is very productive.
Цих людей в Україні, юних українців, які зараз їм буде
growing birth rate, and those people are 10 years plus. And this is our base. From all sociology, from all opinion polls, the people of this generation give more support towards European integration, European values, openness, transparency, liberal reforms, and so on. I believe that after working with them, in particular, hypothetically, having in mind the referendum on the accession, I'm not saying this will happen, this instrument is not mandatory, and yet as the government we need to do our best. If such a referendum takes place, we have also a lot of people showing up and also showing support, because such parameters will define the public opinion. Thank you for your attention. I would like to thank the audience and our advisors. We are grateful once again, and also tomorrow after we rethink your today's speeches on those events that will take place, we shall ask our questions and we shall go deeper, and we have our leaders and our staff will ask the right technical questions at the consultations. This is not our last meeting, though this is the first one, and this is most important. And this first meeting, this introduction was very efficient. I would like to thank the Swedish Embassy for support of this project, for the organization. I believe that the next time when we meet, we shall ask even more practical questions. After bilateral meetings that we shall attend, we shall receive a lot of interesting feedback, become more practical. We shall launch the program of preparation of the agricultural sector, on which we are working these days as a negotiation team. And I believe that it's also important and also very symbolic that the Nordic countries again help Ukraine to move towards Europe, the way as it happened long time ago, and yet it began right here on the same place in the city of Kyiv, and the history finds its way once again. Thank you for such a wonderful summary. Of course, for 1.5 hours we cannot discuss all the challenges and the activities to mitigate them, yet it was a professional discussion. I would like to thank the speakers and the audience for staying until the end of our panel. Shall we applause to everyone? Of course, we shall have an opportunity to meet with the same participants.